From the misty mountains of ancient Japan to the blood-soaked battlefields that shaped an empire, the samurai emerged not just as warriors but as living legends, embodiments of honor, discipline, and death. For centuries, they stood as the elite warrior class, a symbol of a culture where loyalty was measured in sacrifice and where death was often preferred over dishonor. The samurai were more than just soldiers, they were the living embodiment of Bushido, the way of the warrior, a strict code that demanded unwavering loyalty, martial excellence, and a profound acceptance of mortality. To understand the samurai is to unravel the complex tapestry of Japan's history, culture, and societal evolution. The origins of the samurai trace back to the late Heian period in the 10th and 11th centuries. As the central imperial court weakened, regional clans began rising in power, each recruiting skilled warriors to protect their lands and assert control. These warriors, initially called bushi or byuk, gradually evolved into the samurai, a class that would dominate Japanese politics and warfare for nearly a millennium. The term samurai itself means one who serves, reflecting their role as loyal retainers to feudal lords known as daimyo. Unlike the knights of medieval Europe, samurai were not only warriors but also bureaucrats, poets, and philosophers, embodying a unique synthesis of martial and cultural values. The samurai's weaponry was as symbolic as it was deadly. The katana, with its curved, slender blade, was more than a sword, it was the soul of the samurai. Crafted with meticulous care, folded repeatedly to create a blade both sharp and resilient, the katana became an extension of the warrior's spirit. Alongside the katana, samurai wielded the wakizashi, a shorter companion blade, forming the daisho, a pair symbolizing the social status and honor of the bearer. To be disarmed was to lose one's honor, and to lose one's life was to preserve it in a higher realm. The culture of the samurai was deeply entwined with Zen Buddhism and Shinto beliefs. Zen's emphasis on meditation, mindfulness, and acceptance of death profoundly influenced samurai training and mentality. Many samurai practiced zazen meditation to calm their minds before battle and to embrace the inevitability of death without fear. This spiritual discipline was essential in transforming warriors into instruments of precision and focus. The samurai's readiness to face death made them terrifying opponents and highly respected figures. By the Kamakura period, 1185 to 1333, the samurai had become the ruling military class under the shogunate system. The first shogun, Minamoto no Yoritomo, established a military government that shifted power away from the emperor and into the hands of warrior clans. This era saw numerous conflicts as rival clans vied for dominance, and the samurai culture flourished in the crucible of warfare. Battles like the Genpei War were defining moments where honor, strategy, and brutality intersected. Samurai were expected to be masters of multiple weapons and skills: archery on horseback, swordsmanship, strategy, and even calligraphy. The Ashikaga shogunate that followed in the Muromachi period, 1336 to 1573, saw further refinement of samurai culture. It was during this time that the tea ceremony, flower arranging, ikebana, and no theater became integral to samurai life, demonstrating their role not just as warriors but as cultured elites. The code of Bushido began to crystallize, blending Confucian ethics with Buddhist and Shinto elements. Loyalty to one's lord, filial piety, courage, and self-discipline became non-negotiable virtues. The Sengoku period, known as the Warring States era, was a time of near-constant conflict between rival daimyo. From the mid-15th to the late 16th century, Japan was fractured into hundreds of competing fiefdoms. Samurai clans fought brutal battles for land and influence, leading to dramatic shifts in power. This era gave rise to legendary figures like Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu. Their military genius and political maneuvering ultimately unified Japan after centuries of chaos. The samurai of this era were battle-hardened and innovative, employing new weapons such as the arquebus, introduced by Portuguese traders, which challenged traditional swordsmanship and tactics. Despite their martial prowess, samurai were also philosophers and poets. They studied classical Chinese texts and wrote poetry that reflected their inner struggles and fleeting existence. This duality, fierce warriors with a refined aesthetic sense, defines much of the romantic image of the samurai in popular culture. The concept of mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of the impermanence of things, deeply resonated with samurai, coloring their view of life and death. The arrival of European traders and missionaries in the 16th century introduced new ideas, technologies, and religions, complicating samurai loyalties and philosophies. Christianity spread among some samurai, sparking both conversion and conflict. Meanwhile, the Tokugawa shogunate, 1603 to 1868, established a rigid social order with the samurai at the top. Peace during the Edo period forced samurai to adapt from warriors to bureaucrats and administrators, often leading to financial difficulties and identity crises. Without war, many samurai became scholars or artists, but the ideal of Bushido remained a powerful cultural force. Seppuku, or ritual suicide, epitomized the samurai's commitment to honor over life. In moments of disgrace or defeat, samurai would perform seppuku to avoid capture or to restore their family's honor. The act was highly ritualized, involving a precise process and often assisted by a second to end the warrior's suffering swiftly. This willingness to face death rather than live with shame reinforced the samurai's fearsome reputation and societal role as moral exemplars. The Meiji Restoration of 1868 marked the end of samurai dominance. As Japan modernized and centralized under imperial rule, the samurai class was abolished. The sword was banned, and many samurai lost their privileged status. Yet the legacy of the samurai endured in Japanese culture, education, and national identity. Their code of Bushido inspired modern Japanese martial arts and philosophies, emphasizing discipline, respect, and perseverance. Samurai stories, both historical and fictional, continue to captivate imaginations worldwide. The samurai were not infallible or monolithic, their history is filled with contradictions, noble ideals alongside brutal realities, loyalty sometimes twisted by ambition, and a romanticized image that often obscures their complex role in society. Yet their impact is undeniable. The samurai helped forge a unique Japanese identity, balancing tradition and change, war and peace, life and death. Even today, the samurai spirit is invoked in everything from corporate ethics to pop culture icons. Movies, novels, and anime celebrate the warrior's path, reminding us of a time when honor was worth dying for, and death was the final act of loyalty. The samurai teach us that true strength lies not only in the sword but in the heart willing to wield it with honor, dignity, and unyielding courage. The transition from the Edo period into the Meiji era was a seismic shift for the samurai class. As Japan opened itself to the West and rapidly industrialized, the centuries-old warrior caste faced obsolescence. The new government abolished the Han system, dismantled the samurai stipends, and introduced universal conscription, effectively ending the samurai's exclusive claim to martial status. Yet many former samurai channeled their discipline and skills into new roles, as government officials, educators, military officers, and entrepreneurs, shaping modern Japan. The samurai ethos did not vanish, instead, it transformed, influencing the emerging national identity. This transformation was not without resistance. The Satsuma Rebellion of 1877, led by Seigo Takamori, often hailed as the last true samurai, was a desperate bid to preserve samurai honor and status. The rebellion was ultimately crushed, but it became a powerful symbol of loyalty, courage, and tragedy, immortalized in literature and film. Seigo Takamori's story reminds us that the samurai code was not simply about war, but about principles deeply rooted in identity and pride. The samurai's legacy also influenced Japan's military modernization. The Imperial Japanese Army and Navy drew heavily on samurai values of discipline, loyalty, and sacrifice. Officers were often trained in Bushido philosophy, blending ancient ideals with modern tactics. This fusion helped forge Japan into a formidable military power by the early 20th century. However, the idealization of the samurai spirit also contributed to the militarism that led to Japan's involvement in World War II, demonstrating the complex consequences of cultural heritage. Beyond the battlefield and government, samurai culture profoundly shaped Japanese art and literature. The aesthetics of simplicity, subtlety, and impermanence found in tea ceremonies, ink paintings, and poetry, haiku in particular, reflect samurai sensibilities. The warrior's acceptance of death and the fleeting nature of life influenced many forms of expression. Samurai were patrons and practitioners of these arts, demonstrating that the sword was only one facet of their identity. Famous samurai like Miyamoto Musashi, a master swordsman and strategist, exemplify the multifaceted nature of the samurai. Musashi authored the Book of Five Rings, a treatise on strategy and combat that remains influential not only in martial arts but in business and leadership worldwide. Internationally, the samurai have become cultural icons, inspiring fascination and respect. From Hollywood epics to graphic novels, their stories captivate imaginations. The archetype of the noble warrior facing impossible odds resonates universally. The samurai teach us lessons about discipline, sacrifice, and the eternal struggle between life and death, honor and survival. In reflecting on the samurai, we see not only warriors but a mirror of humanity's enduring quest for meaning amid chaos. Their lives were defined by loyalty to family and lord, a fearless embrace of mortality, and a relentless pursuit of perfection in both battle and art. The samurai remind us that honor is not given but earned, often at great personal cost. The history of the samurai is a testament to the power of ideals to shape societies and individuals alike. Their legacy challenges us to consider what we value most: courage or comfort, duty or desire, life or honor. Through their story, we glimpse a world where death was an ever-present companion and where the measure of a person was not years lived but the manner in which they faced the end. Thus, the samurai endure, not just as relics of a bygone era but as eternal symbols of the human spirit's capacity to strive, sacrifice, and transcend. In their swords and stories, we find reflections of our own struggles and aspirations. To walk the way of the warrior is to accept the fragility of life and to live fully within its fleeting span. The samurai did not fear death, they honored it. And in doing so, they secured their place forever in the annals of history, warriors of honor and death.